And so they've got a handful of paintings that I've done in their room. I always have a mixed feeling because I always look at the paintings and I'm like, oh, that's not done. Oh, that's the part that I struggled with. And
This is 5 to 9, the podcast where we discover the hidden passions and hobbies that engineering, product, and technology leaders obsess over when the workday ends.
Tacita, so excited to have you here.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
This is an awesome summer edition, 5 to 9. No, I'm actually traveling today, so I'm actually not in my normal office space and this stuff, but I'm super excited that we're able to make time and get together here because I'm so excited to hear about how Tacita kind of manages to make her thing work between the work and life and all that jazz. But before we get there, Tacita, can you please introduce yourself and let other folks know who you are?
Happy to. I'm Tacita. I'm the CTO for a company called Textio. I'm based in the Boston area. And that's the brief overview summary.
Well, the more important part, as the general theme we're doing here is what do you do in the other hours besides those Zoom to Zooms and, the 5 to 9? What do you do to kind of keep your brain sane? And actually, I remember, we're talking about this. You had a bunch of different things you did, but we're going to choose to talk about one. But I don't know, how do you think about this? What kind of keeps you sane through this world?
Finding the quiet time, whatever gives me time, which is there aren't other inputs. So those other activities aren't like working out. People don't tend to talk to you a whole lot while you're in the middle of working out. For me, painting. When I'm drawing, got my music going, it's just quiet. And that's where I find my balance.
I am with you around quieting the brain. And I think we all have our own modes for that because it's sometimes some folks like to work out. Some people like to run. I like to run. Sometimes it might be cooking, but these are things that keep your focus and activity. So the other things don't jam into your what's actually happening here. So yours is art, right? Like that. And so, how did you find your way there? And how did you get there? And why does it work?
So it works because I can't do it and I can't make myself do it well. And that's really freeing. So I always liked drawing as a kid. I was terrible. And my grandmother showed me these ways. She used to paint these watercolor landscapes, and they were just really simple, easy things. And the result was just so beautiful to look at. So she would hang out with me and I would paint with her. And I loved it. I loved the process. I loved, again, the quiet that we had together doing that. But because I wasn't good, I kind of never focused at it. Or in my brain, in my mind, my labeling for myself was oh, wow, I see those other kids in class who can draw. And it just comes naturally to them. They got this. I don't have that. It was what I told myself for the majority of my first half of my life. And then I got into software engineering during college, and I went to software engineering out of school. But I grew up in a family of construction workers and manual labor. That whole world felt so unfamiliar to me that I was whoa, where have I landed? I don't know about this office life. And so I veered off and took other paths along the way. I was a heavy machinery operator for a minute, but I missed the patterns thinking of engineering. So I thought landscape architecture. So I started exploring landscape architecture. And I did a program where they made you doodle and sketch and draw all the time. And I'm in this program and I'm studying plant material and design patterns and all this stuff. And I was oh man, the thing I really like is just this doodling part. I love sketching the people in the classroom and the plants in the world. And I was maybe actually, since I've just done a bit of a shift in my career, I should just go and dive into this thing. And what's interesting is rather than just being I'm going to go start spending my time painting and drawing on the side, I had this other narrative that I had to learn how to do it. Someone had to teach me to do it right. And so I applied to art school. And I got into art school. I went to the School of the Arts Institute of Chicago, which was an amazing place. And Chicago is phenomenal.
I didn't know this extra part. This is all bonus. I love this.
It was very, looking back, it's really, I sort of crack up at myself. I'm that was a lot of extra school that I signed up for when I could have just got some paint materials and tried things out on my own. And I think growing up in construction, my dad was always the right tool for the job is the right tool for the job. I was like, well, I need to go learn how to identify the tools and understand the tools. And so I got to go to school for this thing. So that kicked me off into it.
I think that's super cool. So this is like co-occurrent with your software engineering career.
Yeah.
Right. Doing
Yeah.
all
So
this.
I ended up fully abandoning the software career for a while, went to art school, went and started a landscape design company for a while. While doing that, I actually was building the software to navigate projects with my customers and everything. That got me back into software engineering. Realized that trees take a really long time to grow and code is really immediate. And I liked that.
Yes.
But what it
the cycle time of plants is too long, right? Yeah.
too long. It's just that's when you plant that tree too deep and it takes you 8 years to find out. I need to know that I introduced the bug immediately.
I mean, who knew there was like the CD pipeline for plants needs to be really worked on here, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
So I left art for a really long time because of all of those other things, the landscape company, going back into engineering. Then I had kids along the way. So now I have zero time to myself. And at some point, I'm not sure what really kicked it back off again. I think I found space. I found a space to actually create art. And so I started.
What does space mean? Physical
space.
Or mental or temporal?
Physical space where
Okay.
nobody else is going to be in the same place as me at the same time. And that meant it was like I could have that quiet. I could have that. This is like I'm in my own realm. I'm not answering to anybody. No, Zoom's not, Slack's not going to get me. Kids, nothing. It's me and my music and my canvas. And so I got back into it. And I've since then, it's been sort of probably 10 years that I've been getting back into it pretty regularly, a little bit less, on and off. There's been some ups and downs. I just keep exploring different mediums and the ones that are like the easiest to clean up, the easiest to fit in, because it is like there's not a lot of minutes in the 5 to 9 time. And so finding the easiest place.
So it's a physical space, but it ends up being like temporal space and approval space and all of these
approval
things,
space,
right?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, and like, look, you called your decision to go art school irrational or something to that effect, and like, look, monetarily, probably, all of us would agree with you, but I think I empathize with it because I think sometimes you need the approval. Like sometimes education structure gives you the approval and the right to go
That's
do.
right.
So it's for your own self-rationalization.
That's right.
Right. It's like all these things. Half the problem is your own head in this stuff. And maybe that's actually what the tuition goes for. Like, yes, formally it's this, but it's actually a way of yourself opting into it. Right. Like it's something to that degree.
I think that's totally right.
And by the way, I love your physical space. I love the mansard roof, attic room you're in. The walls are slightly tilty. And so don't bump your head that way. It's got beautiful light. I can kind of already see why this space works for
My dad
you.
actually
Does
built
this
a lot of
space-
this. This is my childhood home.
Oh, really? That's cool. Does the space, is it just for art, or are you allowed to actually have your laptop up here and do Zoom calls
So
too?
right out of I don't know how much of the view you can see here, but my desk is right there. My gym space is over in that area. So this is a lot of the activities where I need to be able to focus on particular things, whether it's my quiet or my work or my team or whatever, that's all orbiting around here. I do have another space that's in a different area for when I'm painting bigger. The ceiling here is not tall enough. And so there's another space that doesn't actually have my computer in it and does create a different experience.
I mean, I'm excited to talk about that, like art that is bigger than you, but that's coming. So on the way to get there, like we kind of talked about how you arrived there, but like, let's make it tangible. Like, what's the medium? Like, you said paint, you said drawing, like, what do you work in? And like, look, my mental model for this is somewhere between high school using kind of tempera and gouache and kind of learning a little dabbling on a canvas to like now the other end of it, my kids doing art. So like those are the two, but those are my bookends that are my knowledge. So teach me like, what's going on here?
So when I'm painting, up until very recently, my primary choice has been oil paint. And back when I had more time in life, I had a little travel setup that I had, and I would go find some garden, or a cityscape or something, and I would paint with oils. Now I still paint with oils, but it's here. Here's my new little portable thing how awesome is this?
Okay, it looks kind of like it's cool. Like to me, it looks like a kind of cigar box size
exactly
thing
it.
that has kind of like a palette for mixing colors on top, and you kind of peel it away. Did you 3D print this thing? It looks like a 3D printed thing. It's got all these like interlocking pieces.
This is the Gorilla Painter box. Highly recommend. The whole thing, you just like close the whole thing up.
Wow.
Take it with you. It's got a little leather slab.
Oh, look at that thing.
And it's
how cool is that?
a little hole in the bottom to put your thumb in.
It's got a cigar box with a thumb in the bottom that you can put your things. You can hold it in your hand. The top flips open to actually put the canvas or the thing you're painting on. And then like where the cigars would go is a flat place that flips open. So you actually have more flat space, and it slides open to put all the paint. So like this thing, you can take with you on site somewhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you put your.
And do you like?
Right
am I going to see you on the? See you on the subway with this thing, taking it out to the beautiful Boston Commons or something, or like where do you go with this?
Because of the lack of time, I usually tend to go like if I'm going to go outside, I'm going to go in my backyard. I'm going to go sit on the stoops. I'm going to but I don't do that too often anymore because moving away from this space takes more time, and time is so precious. There's just not enough of it. So most of my painting now is here at my desk, which is awkward for me because I used to always paint from something I was looking at, and now it's just like whatever comes to mind.
And it's funny, you've got this total mobile kit, which has constraints, right? Because the medium is smaller. It's, I'm guessing it's, from what I'm seeing, it's about 8.5 by 11 sideways is the medium size. But like you have all this physical space in front of you. So you could be painting bigger spaces. Is there a reason like why a certain size is good or bad or helps?
So here, when I'm painting small, I can paint faster, and I can, so like here's a painting I did in between meetings. And I don't know if you can see it, but it's a little vase. And that's when it's this small, I had 15 minutes. I had my palette knife and it was right here. So having it small in here, I can just like snap something and get it out of my system quickly.
I mean, if you ever wanted to paint a picture of Andrew, this is your chance. Joking.
I actually.
Well, no, you're doing all this in memory, right? Because I don't see all of these things in front of you. I don't see vases. I don't see, because the other painting you're working on, I'm overlooking your shoulder as a dancer, I think, or something like akin to that. I don't see a dancer walking around here. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, most of my stuff now is just like a lot of times I'll start with drawing, and I just like draw a little bit of messiness, and then I just start painting over it, and then something happens. And at some point I'm like, well, time here is done, and the painting just stops, and I pull it off, and I either paint over it to reuse the materials, or it goes into a pile.
We'll get to the pile in a second, but you said earlier you used oil and you used a knife. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is me, they wouldn't let us, and again, this is a long time ago. Oil, was a thing you weren't allowed to use as a high school kid because I don't know why. It's expense or takes too long. I don't know which
chemicals.
Reason, but maybe it could. There's chemicals involved, and then I don't even know I know what a knife is, but what does a knife mean in painting land? Yeah, okay. So it looks like a cake spatula thing, right? Okay.
And,
or a thing you put like mortar on a building on, like you're doing brickwork.
That's exactly what it's like, and it's just as frustrating. And there's lots of different shapes and sizes, which are great. The thing that I like about the palette knives over the paintbrushes is cleaning this thing. You just wipe it down, so it's much faster. So like half the time I spend cleaning up.
And oil means it's actually like it's liquid because of oil, as opposed to when they say water-based is like it's diluted with water, right? This is diluted with oil, right?
So then you need all sorts of special things to actually like chemicals to clean the chemicals, and it's the cleaning up process.
What are these? Actually, I don't even know. Like, does paint come in a tube, and then you get again, I know it's not like, I am a neophyte of this stuff. I'm super uneducated about it, but there's tubes of paint.
And I've got way too many of them. The other day I realized I had 98% of my paints are just blue, just different versions of blue. And a lot of them are actually the same version. I'm like, I must need...
You have the perfect paint to paint.
I do.
It works perfect.
This is going to happen. I'm going to remember this later on, and it's going to come up. So you have these, the oil paints, and in this, so then I leave the paints on my palette. I stick this palette in the freezer because then they don't dry as fast, which is awesome sauce because it's expensive.
Huh.
And then I just
How much is, what is expensive? Like a tube of paint's $10? 20, $2?
It
Like, what
can
are we
be
talking?
like 10 to 50. I am not in the, I get like the student grade. I want to be in the like 8 to 10 range because most of my paintings I kind of toss. So I'm not trying to care if the paint doesn't last. The more expensive the paint, the longer it'll last without fading and the richer the pigment can be. And you can get some different textures. The student grade stuff has a lot of whiteness. You can't get to really great colors, which is okay for me because, again, I threw away most of my paintings. So it's not.
And when you put it in the freezer, like I'm actually thinking chemically what happens, because I guess you're maybe reducing evaporation. You put like in a Ziploc bag or something like that, or yeah.
I probably should because then your food doesn't get on it, but I don't.
Well, I was gonna say, does your food get paint on it?
I have a little.
You're like making.
I made a little like there's a top shelf space for in the freezer, and so it's just sometimes like somebody will put an ice cube tray on top of it and be like, wah, wah, wah.
Yeah, it's like chicken nuggets with a little shit of blue on them, right? Like, okay, so you use that stuff, and so you dilute it. So like oil means oil based, and you get the paint, you freeze the thing, you put it on with this knife thing, and then how do you like make it more liquidy, or like do you mix it? Is it oil? Is it like cooking oil, and then you wash it with it? Like, it's like a big production.
There's a whole bunch of different kinds of mediums you can use. I tend to not like. I just the same thing I used to clean. So there's this Gamsol stuff that I like because it doesn't have a big scent. So I have this huge jar of Gamsol. This is unopened.
Oh, you have all this. Okay, you have these like chemicals on chemicals. I'm looking at these bottles. It looks like an old timey pharmacy.
It's really cool.
Like, I'm just waiting for little skeletons on them. Like, don't drink this. Right?
I have a
that kind
terrible
of stuff.
judgment call. This like when I grew up doing construction and stuff with my father and working on machines. You'd be covered in grease and oil in your hands, and the way to clean that is with more grease and oil. So usually there'd be a bucket of fairly clean gasoline somewhere, and that's how we washed our hands. So I have terrible judgment call. I'm like, you can buy this at the store. There isn't a decimal on it, so I'm probably fine. So I don't make probably the most responsible judgment calls on.
I use Gojo. Was
the
stuff
orange.
We used to use for like, yeah. It actually works really good. I don't know what's in it, but it's magical. Okay, you said earlier you have kids though, so like, is this the part of the segmented space thing? Like, because you've got a lot of complicated chemicals and kids make a mess stuff. I'm guessing kids are older now, but there was a time where they like worked. So was this also part of space and time segmentation too? Like that you can't have this now?
Yeah, because I definitely couldn't a long time ago. But even with my kids, so I also have acrylics. And so I'll sit out in the back stoop with my daughter and she'll set her up with acrylics or watercolors. And I'm got my oil paint, my little box here going. The two of us will just do our own thing. So she's in water-based stuff. We're outside, so
right,
there's no smell.
Acrylic. I've used acrylic before, so that's the water-based stuff. Okay. Tempera is the grade school version, and in a high school, middle school, you get to like acrylic, which kind of looks like oil paint, which is kind of goopy. It has physical texture, right? And the oil's the fancier stuff that you
And that stuff is also like the acrylic tends to be, you can get like bigger tubes of it. And it also tends to be cheaper than oil, which is nice. I'm going to set my child up.
Does it take a long time to dry? Like when you're done with the painting, does it like take weeks and months to
oil
dry?
paint, yes. Oil paint takes forever.
Like what are you talking? Like weeks?
It can, yeah, absolutely weeks. It really depends on how moist it is outside and how much you've thinned it. So if you use a lot of like that Gamsol stuff to thin it out or any other mediums, they've got mediums that help it dry faster and some that make it dry slower. What I like about it drying slow is that I can go back in, like here, you can see like a lot of stuff is sort of mixing. I don't know. Well, you can see it.
Okay. Yeah.
When it's
yeah,
because it stays wet for a long time, you can like mix sections in together and get the colors to like layer into each other in cool ways, which I find really satisfying.
it's a feature, not a bug.
Yes, it's a feature, not a
right?
bug.
Because just to like you can work it for longer, right? Unless someone else smears it before it's dry, then it's
which
I
I definitely do on a regular basis.
Do you have a favorite color? Do they have fun names like crayons do and stuff like
I
that?
love, again, to the blues. So cerulean blue is like I love.
Cerulean blue.
I don't.
Okay.
I'm probably not even saying it right, but that's one of my favorites.
Sounds right to me.
And
yeah.
cobalt, I go back and forth on. So there's warm blues and there's cooler blues. Basically, anything that's blue, I'm going to be happy about.
I was reading a thing back in the day. Isn't cobalt made out of crushed bugs or something like that, or indigo? Like is the pure pink?
There are some. There's actually several of the colors I think that way back in the day were involved crushed bugs. I think the ones I get because it's the cheap student grade stuff. They're not much in here, I don't think. It's like probably crushed crayons or something. I don't know.
Yeah, we use the acrylic paints, crush them, and make oil paint.
Yeah.
I got it. Right. Circular. Well, you use the word medium a bunch. Medium is like the thing you paint on, right? So, right? Am I getting that right? That's what the definition
There's
is?
also medium. There's medium that you mix in with the paints, so you can get different textures,
Oh.
different drying times,
Okay.
different blending.
Again, I don't really know. I'm thinking like you could mix sand in there. There'd be like different mediums just to give it texture or like that, or Rice Krispies, or I don't know. Like I'm thinking things that are textural.
Some people do with different kinds of paints. They use something called a caustic, which is like wax, and you mixing that in. This medium is more just like it's different liquid stuff that you put in.
And so like here, this is not for oil paints, but this is to make your acrylics. This is a medium that you could mix into your acrylics to make your acrylics slow down, because acrylics dry so fast.
All right, it says satin glazing liquid by Golden is
Yep.
what that is, and so it slows down the drying.
Slow drying
so you get
extender.
more time work on it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so that's the medium that's like in your stuff. How about the medium that you paint? Because the medium is also used for the thing you paint on, right? Yeah.
So I paint like this thing with the flowers. This is cardboard.
Okay, yeah, I was just saying. I was like, I think that looks like cardboard, but could be wrong. I don't want to offend
Nope,
your painting.
I'll
here.
paint on
It's
whatever's
like, all right.
around. There's this canvas paper stuff, which is really awesome. So it comes in a little pad of paper, but it's canvasy. So that's really nice. It fits. It's already perfect size for my thing. This is paper that's meant for a bunch of different kinds of paints. And so it can hold oil, it could hold acrylic, wouldn't do well with watercolor. And so all this stuff is super, again, cheap. And since I'm not trying to preserve my paintings for super long, it works.
Okay, yeah, I was asking you this briefly when we first reconnected on this, which is like, so my household is a crafty household, which means we just have like not just stuff of medium everywhere, we have stuff of post-produced art everywhere. I'm kind of imagining your house too is that version of that. Like, is that true? Is there stacks of it? What do
my
you do with
older
it?
paintings I've actually hung up around because they're bigger. And so I used to paint much larger, and so it helps that like that works on a wall. And so I have like a handful of paintings that are around, and my kids every once in a while will pick out a painting. They're like, I like that. I want that in my room. And so they've got a handful of paintings that I've done in their room. I always have a mixed feeling because I always look at the paintings and I'm like, oh, that's not done. Oh, that's the part that I struggled with. And
Yeah, are you allowed to iterate on it? Right, like, because in software world we can iterate on this. Are you allowed to iterate on this? Or
yeah,
okay,
I got
okay.
on my. There's always some painting on an easel in another part of the place here that I just every once in a while go back and be like, I'm going to get it, and I never do. It's been working on it for like 5 years at this point.
But that's the interesting part, right? Like it's insurmountable.
As I was saying before, like I like painting because I can't get it right. Like that's what I got. Like you can't possibly, if you have sort of like ambitious kind of perfectionist or tendencies, you can't. You just can't get it right. And so it's really nice to be able to like you do it. Hopefully you enjoyed the process. If you like the end result, you can stop. If you don't like the end result, you can stop and throw it away, or you can paint over it, or somebody else might like it. So it has kind of, there's no required endpoint to your journey.
I like that admission. I think there's probably analogies that hold to our day jobs on that stuff too. It's never done, like both because you can strive for it, but it's okay and expected to never get there. I don't know, like maybe that's like a little too like, fortune cookie on the whole thing, but like it feels a bit of that.
Like one of the things that from art school that I really enjoyed was you're painting in a classroom with a whole bunch of other people, and inevitably you're going to get stuck at some point. And like I had a professor coming up, he'd be like, you just painted that nose like 17 times in a row over the past week. Like you're not doing anything new, and you can't just like scraping it and repainting it is not getting you anywhere. And he'd like grab your paintbrush and hand it to somebody else in the classroom and be like, you go take a walk, you finish this painting, and then you come back and someone's done something to your canvas, and now you have to go from there with their inputs, having really released your thinking.
But I bet it's actually better, right? Because it's not only on you at that point, right? Like it's like architects who, like, an empty plot of land with no, hills next to it is really hard. Like, some level of constraints is actually more interesting. Like, not infinite, like, not completely where you can't do anything, but like constraints actually help, right?
And it just unlocks your thinking. It's like, I boxed myself into one solution. This person's gonna, like, that solution's not working, but I can't see past it. And this person's just gonna knock it away. And now I get to start from a new place.
Like, re-dice roll it because it's not working. Which I think at least, okay. So we've talked about the medium as the thing used to paint, and we talked about medium as the physical thing you paint on. We haven't spent much time talking about what you paint of. Like, what, you said memory briefly, you said you looked at things, but like, what inspires you? Was there like an artist? Do you wake up with a dream? Do you think about things that happened a long time ago? Like, how do you negotiate the what you're painting? Or is this all flowing? Like, how is there looking back at your stack of paintings, like, is there a thing going on here?
So it all, at this point, says I'm not looking at things anymore. I mean, sometimes I still do, but a lot of times it comes from the marks that start off on the paper. So there's two other mediums that I use a lot. One is I have a roll of butcher block paper, and I just roll that out. It's really big, and I can just like use charcoal, and I use it like a chalkboard. And so I just like scribble on it, and at some point, like, a face will emerge from the scribble, or a profile, or a figure. And then I start scribbling over that, and I start scribbling over that. And so then it's just coming, like, I see something in the marks. So that's when I'm drawing with charcoal and blasting my music, and you're standing, you're dancing. It's just like total flow. When I'm using the oils here, I'll draw a thing that I want to look at. Sometimes it starts from like, I want to see these colors. I want to paint with these kinds of colors. And that looks to me in my mind like that's picking up a flower or a dancer or whatever. And it's because of the colors I want to see. And then that suddenly brings in an image, and then I sketch that out. I have a new medium that I found that I'm so excited about. It's awesome sauce. Are you ready? All right. So this stuff is so fun. It's called Ecoline.
It looks like you have ink droppers in my visual.
Yeah.
Looks like you just showed me 10 ink droppers and a rainbow of colors, what you just showed me.
And this stuff, it's like ink. And I don't know what I'm doing. I've only done a handful of things with it so far. And this one is very much a flow thing. Like, I just will sketch, usually. For the 4 times I've done it, I've started with a face, sketched the face, and then I just throw this ink all over it, and I squirt water. I've got a little water bottle squirter here. And then that face that I sketched initially kind of disappears, but there's like a remnant of it. And so then I draw on top of the remnant of it, and then I get a new image. So, like, it was the first one I did. There was no sketching afterwards. It was just...
Whoa, that is cool.
Face.
I see a face in there.
And then this was the...
It looks like that guy, the guy from Kiss.
Oh my God.
Far away.
You see that?
No?
I absolutely see that. 100%. This one, let's see. Maybe somebody will come up for this one. So this was the next one that came up.
Ooh, I see that. Look, that is a... Oh, okay, let me step back. I see an old-timey, like, 1900s hat. I see glamour and a Marilyn Monroe kind of face going on here. And then I see a flamboyant, maybe like carnival dress. I don't know. I'm making stuff up here.
I love that. Yes. All right.
Am I there?
You're there. I'm loving this interpretation. Okay, ready? Next up.
Let's go.
Oh, wow. The color's coming up.
Oh, this is... all right, so this is definitely in a Marilyn Monroe kind of thing. Maybe I'm just seeing that, but the rainbow hair thing is part of it. It's the really strong lips, but then the rainbow wig or rainbow colors is dramatic and crazy in that.
So
I don't know. Like, this is actually... We're gonna put this in the show notes for sure.
Let's see what other people
think.
It's so much fun. Yeah. And, like, then I can bring out... I've got my pastels here. And so then I bring that out, and I start drawing on top of that. And I'll draw on top of the oils with pastels, which... You just start mixing all the stuff up. So all of that, there's like flow with the charcoal from just making marks with the charcoal. There's flow from sketching something in the paint. So, like, I start with intentional marks, and then this is just, I start with color, and I don't know.
I love it. Like, I'm actually like, again, I'm seeing your brain a little bit, but I think there's something about, I see this amongst many, is that, like, you do this in a way to kind of react. It's a strange, I'll project it into your way. It's a form of problem solving. Like you enjoy like some chaos that actually helps kind of free your brain. And then you're in a reaction interpretation mode. And a reaction interpretation actually is in some ways calming too, because you're like in the purity of reacting. Because if you have a complete blank slate, it's a lot of pressure, like to just nail it. And I think
That's right.
I think whether it's in the paper or just setting off things and just seeing what comes of it, then, it's like introduce randomness to find patterns, which patterns give you a chance to do reaction and then refine it, something like that.
That's
right?
it. Which is, it does, like, that is the fun stuff in so many things in life, whether it's work or teaching your kids some new thing, or like it's that reaction and getting to clarity from the chaos and like just riding through that. When you're doing, you can't control things. And it's just like you're riding the wave of whatever sort of influences you and triggers stuff.
Yeah. This is like a life philosophy thing too, probably. I mean, I don't know if you actually get to do kind of actual coding, kind of like good old fashioned nerd stuff, right? I've long lost the chance to do that. But I actually think there is something about part of that maker brain is this world of like problem solving, debugging, fixing kind of it. And I know art sounds like it's the furthest away from it, but there is part of it that is that. It's like, even though like it's a totally different construct at surface, but there are parts of the emotion that feel and the way the brain works that gets in there.
Yeah.
I think that's what
and
I'm
the
seeing
satisfaction too of like when there is something you're wrestling with your image and you reach a point where like, oh, like I got to something better. It might not be the best it could get to, and I will never know what that looks like. I can't. But I feel better about where it is, and it's like I fixed the bug. I might have been able to fix that bug in a more secure, more performant way or something like that.
But it is better than it was, and like that's a step forward. Yeah. I love it. Well, okay, so like let's stretch the analogy too far. How do you keep your code clean? Like you got all this stuff here. Like how do you work? How do you organize it? Like, is it modules, components? Like, how do you separate it? Like, how do you not let the chaos take over your world here, right? Because I'm looking at your place. It's pretty clean, or at least from what I can tell, right? Like,
it's sparse.
Like, I could imagine this stuff going everywhere. The paint everywhere, paper everywhere, stuff everywhere. Like, how do you contain that stuff?
If this wasn't also my workspace, I would probably want it to be a little bit more chaotic. But because of my workspace, I'm like, I keep it pretty tame. But when I have had other spaces that I could set up in, I also like to build things. So I'd build like the things when I would paint big, I need a way to store my canvases. And so I'd build the structures and I would build little containers for like, instead of using some can, which is, I really just do love this can, but I would build the thing that holds all my paintbrushes. And so I would just build little boxes and little containers, and it was very satisfying. And
Okay. So you're containing the chaos as part of the joy.
Containing
here.
the chaos.
I forgot to talk about this. So big format paintings, which we've now been talking about 8.5, like what does big format mean? Like how big? And then like just out of curiosity, like is it canvas? Is it wood? Like what are we talking big? How big? And where does that live?
It's post school. So art school was infinity years ago. It was a very long time ago. But in art school,
which would be like 2 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm joking.
Because I'm 28 now. So in art school, I would paint things that were between like 30 by 40 canvas or something that was my height. And that was unwieldy for apartment life or wherever I've lived since. That's not something I've been able to have space for. So now usually like when I'm painting canvas, it's, 40 inches in some dimension, or sometimes they're even this, but like when it's bigger paintings, they're like 30 by 40 roughly shifting a little bit.
I mean, those are bigger commitments. They take longer to finish, and they're kind of expensive in the stuff, right? Like the bit I know about art history stuff, some of the canvas reuse was just purely practical around expense because that stuff's expensive, right?
Luckily, so there's a lot of places where you can get sort of packages of pretty cheap canvases, like Jerry's Artorama is a great one.
This is the good, bad part of the Amazon niche of the world. You get a lot of this stuff.
And so you can get things that are reasonably priced. They're going to warp if they're too reasonably priced. So I try and find something that's not like totally bottom of the price range. Because because it's really annoying when they start twisting and warping, and then you never are going to have it on the wall. It's like trying to dance its way off. But so I just have a handful of canvas. I still have all the canvases from when I was in art school, and I would every once in a while just grab one of those and paint over that. So I reuse a lot of the things.
I kind of love it because you're not precious about the history. You're actually getting to add and evolve it, right?
One of my favorite paintings, actually, like two of them. There's a couple of my paintings that I like, and there's not all the time. But when I do like one, a lot of them have come from some painting that I had. I turned the canvas upside down, and some of that old painting is coming through, and it has an impact on what ends up there in a way that I've ended up really liking.
Yeah, you reset it. It's the evolution of that thing. Well, last bit here. Like, so this seems like a very solo activity for you as opposed to
everything else in life.
You know, like earlier you said you did with your daughter side by side, but it's not like, it's not a group activity. This is you and your brain.
Yeah? Like my daughter will sometimes, my son has even a couple times drawn with me. Sometimes I will draw like my partner or something, or I'll draw someone like we're on a Zoom call and we're hanging out with a friend far away, and they'll be like, hey, I'm going to sketch you while we're hanging out. So that's as sort of group communal interactive as it gets. But for the most part, it's like me and my music.
And you thinking, because you said a lot of this was by memory or imagination, right? Like that's, you know, you're doing less of the, let me go study this figure and like look at that for a while, right? This is all in your brain and that stuff, articulation of that, right? I love it. Well, this has been really helpful understanding how this calms you, how it fits into your life, how it teaches you some patience or iterativeness or never finishing. I love the posture that puts us all in that space. If some of the folks here that get to hear this story or get to see some of your art are inspired to do this, how would you say to get started in lieu of actually going to art school in Chicago, and like in lieu of that, like in a more practical way, like how do I get started?
I think finding the medium that's easiest for you to use most frequently. Like, oh, actually, I remember what got me fully back into it. Someone was doing some like drawing a day or painting. Maybe it was even reading a book. Like, we're going to read some amount a day, but there's something, and they were tracking it, and I was following them on Instagram. And so each post was like day 47 out of 365. And I was like, I'm going to do that with sketching. And I took the bus to work at the time, and I had a little pocket sketchbook, just like not fancy paper or anything. And as I'm on the bus, I'd be sketching. I'd barely even be looking because I'd get car sick. Then doing that every day for a while, at some point transitioned to like, actually I want to do more than just sketch this thing like fire hydrants. I'm tired of drawing fire hydrants at red lights. So you find the thing that's easy to do, like, and it doesn't matter what it is, just as long as it's easy.
So knock the barrier down. That's it. I love this. It's again to runners, which is, or at least my unlock for like running was just like, just do a mile a day. It doesn't have to be fast, anything. Right. And then you can find more from it from there. Right. So like, whether I think what I'm hearing from you is whether it's a pencil or a ballpoint pen and doodling in the margins, like do whatever it is to get you in the flow, and then you can build on it from there.
Once you build that initial habit, you start wanting it, and then you start carving out the time.
Now, let's go to the other side. Let's say you did that and you're like, I want to get into this oil painting, knife slinging kind of a world. Like, what's the entry point there? Like, how do we start it there?
There's sort of two approaches. One is you go and you get the kit and you just start doing stuff. Just like
you just hit it. You go to Dick Blake and you buy the thing and you just, good luck. You don't know what you're doing, but just do it.
And you're going to end up painting. So you can't get it wrong. You've done it.
You just declared, I'm painting, right?
I put marks on canvas. I'm done. Or even on cardboard. And then the other way is there's so many courses out there. There's like community classes. There's like, if there's an art school near you, they probably have something. And then there's so much stuff online. I have a Instagram account just for my art. And that's like, that one's like my public one because I don't care if people see that stuff, but it's a way that I get feedback on the stuff I do, but also I've trained the algorithm to just feed me other artists. And so there's a lot of just like random tutorials that will come up and like that's how I found the Ecoline stuff. There's some woman who does this really cool stuff with it, and I should remember her name. And so I started, it's like, I'm going to buy this and try it out. So that's another.
I love it. So, okay. So old Tacita went to school and looked at the formality of this thing. New Tacita feels like more in the flow of like, just get started, do something. And if Instagram brings me a lesson to it, then that's fine too.
Yeah.
Right. Two paths.
I mean, I loved art school, not saying I didn't, and I got a lot out of it. Yeah. New Tacita would be like, just go hang out with some paints and see what happens.
Yeah, like don't wear the formality, just flow with it and see what happens. Well, Tacita, thank you so much for doing this with me. This has been tons of fun, and it's like refreshing my brain around, like I haven't engaged with art as a production medium for a long time, but this is very cool, and thank you for sharing.
Thanks so much for the conversation. I'm ready to make some stuff tonight.
Love it. You do concept of blue shirt.
Yes.
That'll be your...
Yes. I'll send you what comes out.
Love it. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Andrew Lau here. I hope you enjoyed this episode of 5 to 9. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on the next episode. Who knows what hidden talents and hobbies we'll discover in the next episode of 5 to 9.